The mansion was silent except for the soft ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall arched windows, pouring over the golden curtains and illuminating the marble floor. Somewhere inside, a baby's soft cry broke the stillness, fragile, desperate, and pure. It came from the nursery on the second floor of the house, the one no one entered except the hired staff. Ethan Grant, a self-made millionaire who built his empire from nothing, stood in his study going through another set of business reports. His eyes scanned numbers, profits, and proposals, but his mind was elsewhere. Since his wife, Rachel, passed away during childbirth 8 months ago, nothing in his grand mansion felt like home anymore. Everything was clean, perfect, expensive, but empty. He had hired countless nannies since his wife's death, but none of them stayed long. Some couldn't handle the baby's constant crying. Others said the house felt too cold, too lifeless. A few left in tears after failing to meet his impossible standards. Ethan wasn't cruel by nature, but grief had turned him distant, strict, and guarded. He didn't trust easily, especially not with his only son, Liam. The child was all he had left, the last memory of Rachel. Then came Clara. She wasn't like the others. She came from a small town, spoke softly, and didn't seem intimidated by Ethan's wealth or silence. When she was interviewed, she didn't try to impress him with fake smiles. She just said one thing that struck him deeply: every baby deserves warmth, even in a house full of walls. For reasons he couldn't explain, he hired her immediately. For the first few days, Ethan hardly noticed her presence. She did her job quietly, never complained, and somehow managed to calm Liam's crying. The baby who once screamed for hours now slept peacefully in her arms. The other staff whispered about her, some admired her gentle nature, others were suspicious of her calmness. But Ethan paid no attention. To him, she was just another nanny. Until that morning. It was a Tuesday, a day that started like any other. Ethan left his home office to grab a file he had left upstairs. As he climbed the staircase, he heard a faint hum, a lullaby, followed by the soft sound of a baby cooing. He froze halfway up the steps. That song, it was the same lullaby Rachel used to sing to Liam before she died. His chest tightened. Slowly, he followed the sound toward the nursery. The door was slightly open. Through the narrow gap, Ethan saw Clara sitting on a chair by the window, sunlight falling across her blue uniform. Liam was in her arms, small hands clutching her as she softly rocked him. Her voice was tender, soothing, filled with something Ethan hadn't heard in months: love. But then, something unexpected made him freeze. He saw her loosen her collar slightly, and for a moment, he realized she was breastfeeding his son. His heart pounded. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Shock, anger, confusion, all rushed through him like a storm. He pushed the door open, his voice trembling with disbelief. "What are you doing?" Clara looked up, startled. Her face went pale as she immediately covered herself and held the baby protectively. "Mr. Grant, please, I can explain." Ethan's voice was sharp, full of rage and disbelief. "Explain? You think there's an explanation for this? You were hired to take care of my son, not..." His voice broke mid-sentence, trembling with grief and fury. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, but her voice stayed calm. "He was hungry, sir. He wouldn't take the bottle. He's been crying all morning, and I couldn't stand to see him in pain. I couldn't." Ethan stared at her, struggling to process her words. His rational mind screamed that she had crossed a line, that this was unacceptable. But another part of him, the part that had been silent for months, saw something else. The baby in her arms was peaceful, smiling, content for the first time in days. Clara's hands were gentle, her expression full of pure affection, not shame. Still, his pride wouldn't let him soften. "You had no right," he said coldly. "You're fired." Clara's eyes widened. "Please, sir." "I didn't mean, I said you're fired," he snapped. He turned away, unable to bear the sight. The memory of Rachel, her love, her warmth, flooded him painfully. He felt betrayed, not by Clara, but by his own emotions. Clara didn't argue further. She gently laid Liam back in his crib, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I only wanted to help." Then she gathered her things silently, wiping away tears, and left the room. The mansion felt even colder that day. Ethan couldn't focus on work. He tried to convince himself that he did the right thing. Rules were rules. But as night fell and Liam began crying again, his heart broke a little more. The baby refused the bottle, just like before. Ethan tried everything, formula, warm milk, rocking him gently, but nothing worked. The cries echoed through the halls, louder and more desperate. By midnight, Ethan sat on the nursery floor, exhausted, helpless, and defeated. His son's tiny cries pierced through the silence like daggers. For the first time, Ethan realized how much Clara's presence had changed this house. It wasn't just her care for the baby, it was the warmth she carried into every corner. He remembered her words, "Every baby deserves warmth, even in a house full of walls." Tears welled in his eyes as he whispered to the empty room, "Rachel, I don't know what to do." He looked at his son, red-faced from crying, and finally broke down. The next morning, after hours of restless thought, Ethan made a decision he never imagined he would make. He called Clara. She didn't answer at first, but after a few tries, her soft, tired voice came through. "Mr. Grant." He hesitated before speaking. "Liam, he won't stop crying. He hasn't eaten since you left." There was silence on the line, then her gentle voice replied, "I'll come right away." When she arrived, the mansion staff looked shocked. Ethan stood by the door, guilt written all over his face. Clara didn't say a word. She went straight to the nursery, picked up the crying baby, and within minutes, Liam calmed down in her arms again. The sight made Ethan's heart ache. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, barely audible. "I overreacted." Clara looked up, her eyes soft but firm. "You were scared. I understand. But sometimes, love doesn't follow rules, Mr. Grant. Sometimes, it's just what someone needs." Ethan nodded slowly, his chest heavy. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, that act of compassion, would change everything in his life. That night, as Clara sang Liam to sleep, Ethan stood silently by the doorway, watching them. For the first time since Rachel's death, he felt something he hadn't felt in months, peace. He whispered under his breath, "Maybe warmth isn't weakness after all." And from that moment, something began to change, not just in the mansion, but inside his heart.